morning to you. I want to start off right where Kelly O'Donnell left off, the developments on Capitol Hill. She is watching the House Oversight Committee. That contempt vote that we are expecting comes on the heels of the House Judiciary Committee holding Barr as well as former White House counsel Don McGahn essentially censuring them yesterday. What's your reaction to what you're witnessing on Capitol Hill right now?
I would point you back to when the Mueller report first came out, Kristen. Journalists like you were asking us, well, when will you move on? How long will you keep on sort of preening and saying there's nothing in the Mueller report other than what we've already known? And yet it's them who are in Congress who are trying to do a do-over of a report that is the authoritative, definitive, conclusive, and final word on what was investigated. It was meant to be investigating collusion by a foreign government in a campaign that I ran to a successful end. And we already, as a nation, have spent 22 months and tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. People like Don McGahn have already complied, gave hours and hours, dozens of hours of testimony before Don has testified previously. So I know America is going to see this for what it is, which is an attempted do-over of something that they've already funded and that we patiently waited for and complied with completely.
Let me just ask you about that word do-over, because you're referring to it as a do-over, but as you know, Democrats on Capitol Hill say they have an oversight responsibility. Mueller himself, in his report, cited Congress as the authority that would follow up on his report, essentially, Kellyanne. So I guess the question is, look, if there's nothing to hide, why not cooperate? Why not direct Barr and McGahn to cooperate and turn over all of the documents if you really want to move on?
As you know, many of those documents are privileged, and I want your viewers to recognize the facts there, that many of these documents are privileged, so they will not be turned over willy-nilly. The other thing is, I have to slightly disagree with the characterization that Director Mueller just explicitly directed Congress to take it up. He cites
Congress in his report, though, Kellyanne.
Sure, of course. He cites many things.
He cites Congress.
I read the report. He cites many things in his report, including that there was no collusion, despite the fact that your network said it many times every single day for many years, respectfully. One thing in the report that's important to note is the job of the special counsel is to refer an indictment or decline a referral an indictment. That is it. Words like exoneration, extraneous phraseology really is not an appropriate responsibility. And when you said that the Congress has an oversight responsibility, oversight is different from overreach. And you're yet to point out to me, as is anyone else, what would be new in these investigations, what would be new in this testimony other than what we've already seen in the actual Mueller report. People were worried for very many months. You're going to fire Mueller. We need to protect Mueller. The president's interfering. Actually, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, made clear in their memo that one at the Justice Department felt like we had interfered with the investigation at all. So they were able to have the latitude, the money, everything they needed.
And just to be clear, no one here ever came to any determination about what may or may not have been in the Mueller report until
I think some of your talking
out.
Heads have, yes.
Kellyanne, but let me just stay on topic here and just be very clear, because you talked about those privileged documents. Can we take that as confirmation that the White House will be in communication with DOJ about what documents are turned over and whether they may be subject to executive privilege as it relates to that deal that was struck between Nadler and DOJ?
No, I will not confirm that, but I would remind you that the president has said many times, as have we who speak on his behalf, that executive privilege is always on the table as an option. However, as you know, in recent days, Chairman Nadler and the DOJ have tried to come to an agreement about how to proceed. So people should be very pleased about that.
But the White House is the White House will intervene if they feel as though some of those documents are protected by privilege, correct?
Certainly, if they do. But let's go back to the beginning here. We produced 1.4 million pieces of paper as part of the original investigation that lasted 22 months and has cost taxpayer dollars something north of $30 or $35 million. They produced 2,800 subpoenas, 500 witnesses, foreign pen registers. I mean, there was no interference. They got to do their work. And the special counsel has concluded his work and shut down his office, and he's moved on. And it'd be good if other people can move on. And Kristen, you said if we have nothing to hide, what's the problem? It's not about nothing to hide. We've given all the information as part of the Mueller investigation. It's that we're not doing the business in a bipartisan fashion of this country.
Kellyanne, is impeachment is bottom line when you look at all of these developments on Capitol Hill? Does the president think impeachment is now more likely?
Well, he has not said that. We hardly discuss that. We just can't believe that there is so much pressure, more pressure on Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, who's gotten nothing done as the leader of over 100 days on the job now. We just can't believe there's more pressure to get impeachment done than infrastructure. I mean, that just seems to be.
How do you get infrastructure done when Nancy Pelosi says she's done with the president? How does he get any other legislative accomplishment?
That's a very unfortunate comment from, I think, a speaker who's shown she has very little control over her caucus and she has very little control over her temper when it comes to this president.
But how does the president get a legislative achievement, Kellyanne? He's the president. He's the one who's got to fight for his reelection. How does he get another legislative achievement?
We're happy to work with all the Democrats, Kristen, who have to go home and want to show that they've actually produced for the people they represent. So if they want to go home and they want to say petty partisan politics got in our way of repairing these crumbling bridges and roads in disrepair, and we're not expanding rural broadband, and we're not making sure that our waterways and our other modes of transportation are modernized and safe and easily accessible, they can go explain that. But you have 31 Democratic members in the House, Kristen, who represent districts that Trump-Pence won in 2016. They want to get something done, and so do some others. Look at the USMCA, for example. I think if Nancy Pelosi put the USMCA for a vote, it would pass the House. And we challenge her to do that because that's a great trade deal that would have bipartisan support if, in fact, she put it up for a vote. Why doesn't the Congress under Nancy Pelosi fix Flores, fix the TVPRA, fix asylum?
And let's talk about his fight for re-election. Yesterday, we all witnessed that remarkable split screen. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden out on the trail in Iowa. Let's remind our viewers what it looked like.
We have to clearly and fully reject, for our own safety's sake, his view of the presidency.
People don't respect him, even the people that he's running against. They're saying, where is he? What happened?
Quote from Donald Trump, "I have absolute power." No, you don't, Donald Trump.
Sleepy Joe. He's a sleepy guy.
Kellyanne, we woke up to these polls which show a number of the top Democratic candidates beat President Trump. Why do you think that is? Is he vulnerable?
Oh, those polls were done by the same people who got 2016 so backwards and never saw the Trump presidency, his election coming. We kept having the candidates Trump and Pence go to a lot of those swing states in the Rust Belt areas that President Obama had carried twice with over 50% of the vote, where Hillary Clinton could never get 50% of the vote. And yet in those states, they had elected a Republican statewide for Senate and/or governor. And that was our plan. I was on TV every single day, including this network, going through that plan as it was happening. What I would say about yesterday, though, is it looks like a split screen, but it truly is not, because only one of them is the president. And the best way to get reelected is what you do as president, or what you fail to do as president. And this president's economy, his regulatory reform agenda, what he's trying to do around the globe, the energy independence that we're net energy exporter now, the natural gas development in this country, everything that's happening. And look, I also just can't believe that the former vice president mentioned President Obama a couple of times and mentioned President Trump 76 times, one time for every candle on the cake. I mean, it's a little obsessive.
Kellyanne, we know that the president is focused on the polls, right? He was tweeting about it today. He was tweeting about his own internal polling. He says these are the best numbers we have ever had. We have folks who are familiar with these internal polls that he's citing who say that's just not the case, that there is concern about internal polling. Is there?
The president will continue to press his message across this country. He's going to return to those states when he won.
Kellyanne? Are you concerned about internal polling?
It's not a yes. But remember, when the president says we've got some of the best numbers we've ever had, he means among Republicans. Also means among some of the individuals who voted for him last time. I've seen lots of reports where people are trying to say, oh, are union members upset with him, manufacturers, rural America, and yet they're sticking with him in many of these polls. I think also when the president says we've had the best numbers ever, he's also talking about the unemployment numbers, the growth numbers, the optimism numbers, the net manufacturing jobs. Biden's record on manufacturing was a disaster. They didn't have unemployment under 4% and growth above 4%.
Has he ever asked you
Those are the important
Kellyanne,
numbers.
to the reporting that he's asked some advisors to mislead on what those internal polls actually
Never.
show? Is
And he
that
knows
the
I
case? Has he
wouldn't.
ever asked you to mislead on the polls?
No, and he knows I wouldn't. In fact, I was a pollster for decades.